people who don't have can have access. I mean, we have media collusion, which includes here in the Eastern Cape, which includes community media and mainstream media, and people have been taking stories and putting them everywhere. You know, I mean, us as AIP here in the Eastern Cape, and I know Mpumalanga was also doing the same thing with the arena there. We've been like catering stories, taking stories from all different kinds of based on COVID stories around the communities and putting them in our website, Skawara News. And so there are many challenges, but the worst challenge is that it has hit us very hard, and many newspapers before COVID, and we all know that, you know. And so it's become a real challenge about how to strategize. And for me, just to push the way forward, is that we need a different kind of approach, which is, I think, the importance of media and journalism itself should be prioritized in the essence of being much more professionalized, because we know there's no time better than this that we need good journalists. There's no time better than this that we need good information from communities. You know, we have an influx of clickbaits, the influx of fake news, you know, and it's just totally disorientated and fragmented our communities. So I think it's very important now that we have we come together as the whole industry, whether community or mainstream, to come up with strategies on how we can really professionalize the industry in itself. Because at the end of the day, as much as print is falling off, there's also a rise on the online content, you know, which is in itself it gives us an whole idea on how things can be done. You know, there's no longer radio now or TV has been encompassed into one with the assets of online. But what is lacking there? It is how do we monetize that? Because the advertising that is coming there is controlled by mainstream people who don't know, from Facebook, from Google. And if you look at Europe and how Europe has actually challenged that in terms of making sure that the content needs to be paid for by these platforms. We share content, which is, I think, is our main king as community newspapers, because we have content that is not out there. We have content that is based on ideas and their cause, and instead of just content that is based on the market-based system, you know. So we need to challenge these big IT companies so that they can be able to have a situation whereby content is being paid for instead of us just sharing content. So there's many things to be said, and there's also lots of things we can talk about, even the legislation, even of broadening the press code into understanding that as much as we're here, as much as there is laws, as much as there is a civil society, there will always be community media. There will always be community journalism. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Wandile.
I'm Jimmy Lamini from the National Community Radio Forum. So the question that is asked today is that can community radio stations survive during this pandemic?
Yes.
Community broadcasters, they have to ensure that information that they disseminate is accurate and it's relevant. We also need to encourage our people to adhere to the precautionary measures that the president of the country have actually outlined. Therefore, radio plays a very important role in terms of ensuring that people are starting to have a dialogue about even those precautionary measures that the government have put in place. So basically, we understand the strength of radio in terms of ensuring that people, they have an access to information as one of information. So a very informed society makes very informed decisions. And we've seen the history have actually taught us that radio plays a critical role in terms of ensuring that people are able to have a dialogue about issues that are affecting them. But the critical question that is actually facing or confronting us now is the issue of sustainability. Much as we adhere to all those precautionary measures that the president actually put in place, we need also to look at it. I think we know that radio survived through advertising, particularly most community radio stations. So in the event of stations, they don't necessarily have clients that are coming to the stations. The likelihood is that revenue-wise station would then suffer. But in terms of the content is always available because coming to the station, we are talking to our communities, respective communities with their own languages and with their own challenges. Like for instance, I can actually make a typical example. When you talk to a community in the Val Triangle, there is a challenge of service delivery issues that has a negative implications in terms of the precautionary measures. Like for instance, the government is actually saying people must stay at home, but you'll find that there's a challenge of electricity and other basic services that people don't necessarily have. And therefore, people, they cannot access even that information in the absence of the electricity. So those are critical challenges that we must also take into cognizance. And we also have to be mindful to the fact that much as we had a role that we must play as community broadcasters, the resources are very critical in terms of ensuring that community radio stations are effective and are efficient. In the absence of resources, it becomes extremely difficult, even for us to discharge our responsibilities as community broadcasters. But I think the MDDA, we must actually give them credit for what they did, for the initiative that they came up with regard to this relief fund. And we think that if they can actually stretch it to concretely ensure that in this prescribed period of 6 months, they are able to subsidize or provide stations with that the relief fund to ensure that stations are able to function optimal. I think that is our submission as the NCRF with regard to how do we perceive the pandemic and how can we actually survive beyond this pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy. I think we must, I don't know if Lieta, you want to have a bite on the question so that we can move to other issues. Lieta Koza, are you there from Soweto TV?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I do. I don't know if all of you guys can hear me.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, cool. I joined Soweto TV last year, and I want to speak on a very different situation where a lot of us as community media, one of the things that I think, one of the challenges that we somehow have always not paid attention to has been the issue of governance. And what normally happens is that as a result of that, you would not necessarily get good funding because a lot of people are actually, they don't want to be associated with you if your governance issues are questionable. So Soweto TV was actually going through that as well. And as someone who was from a highly professional space, I was.
Can you hear me, Carol?
I'm still speaking.
Yes, we are listening.
Okay.
Shoot.
But I think for me, I was looking into why the station, which is situated in such a historical place, was not doing well, especially when it comes to financial muscles. They were able to hire good journalists. A lot of, even my staff now, when I got there, a lot of them didn't have any post-matric qualification. And I needed to come into that space to be able to make sure that we in state go ahead and retrain some of the staff if people are passionate about that. So the first step for me was to make sure that we have the people who would show the kind of activism that we need in the journalism space, not just people who are there to earn monies, because it is in times like this that you would be able to see even your own staff for who they truly are. So as a leader, I came in to try and work on the mindset of the people to make sure that we are actually on a good trajectory in terms of making sure that when we go out there to look for funding, we're not just only going to knock on government doors, because what has happened is that we were gradually now beginning to be captured by some forms of government, because if you don't have money, they would be able to just send you to things that they expect you to cover, which those are the things that, it's a press conference, really. You're not raising any issues, you are just reporting on that. But part of our job is to raise issues so that the government can respond to, is to raise issues so that both government and private sector can come together and see how best can they, solve the situation in the townships. So as big as this problem is, we were going through a very tight budget even before Corona. And I'm sorry to say this, I know this is the time for, like we're going through a very rough time right now. But at the same time, because this is, for us, financial lack has been our reality. It helped us to then be able to know how best can we work with the very limited resources that we have in making sure that during COVID, we can be able to do some stories. As a result, we decided then that we would actually go out, like we are now trying to work with Maponya Mall as well, to bring local people in Soweto to make sure that, this channel won't die. Beyond just it employing people, we want to make sure that it becomes a successful training ground for journalists. And as a result of that, a lot of people, in terms of sentiments, that were beginning to listen to us, because we are on a drive to make sure that we change. The governance issues, guys, are a crisis, because as much as we're talking about funding, the minute when that money comes in, we spoke about Facebook 2 days ago. If Facebook comes in and say, we can give you money, but they look into your governance issues, compliance is important, because community media feel neglected. Therefore, it's easier to do business with government where not much paperwork is required, not much skills is required in making sure that everything else is run properly. So I think as we begin to digest and going forward and beyond COVID as well, I mean, we are in the same space with Josie FM, but we hardly share content. We would be rushing to the same story where we could just be working together, and especially during this time, but there is no such. So the neglection of community media then leads to others to think that it's the survival of the fittest. And therefore, we will not even feel the need to share whatever little that we have. I, for one, as the head of news, have surrendered my car, I actually told the management to say, whatever amount of money that you deem necessary for you to cut, give it to my staff, so that none of them must sit at home to saying, we're not going to get paid because this has been the situation. So you need people who would actually be able to lead and to make sure that we survive this period now and beyond. So that will just be my 2 minutes contribution to the question, and we'll take other issues as we go.
Sorry, colleagues, can I just add something to what Lito says? I'm from Cape Town TV, and I don't know how much this issue affects my colleagues in the radio area, but in television, it's our transmission costs which are a major cost factor. And the thing is, with this proposed digital broadcasting, those costs are going to rise dramatically. So it seems to me, government has for many years promised the community media sector that they would be, dedicating 30% of government ad spend to community media, and this has never happened. Is there not perhaps an argument that we can make that government must subsidize substantially our transmission costs? And at least, that would be a concrete subsidy which would enable us to be more sustainable on the finances that we can bring in. What would you think of that?
Because Zukiswa is facing challenges with her connection, in the meantime, I'm going to be sub-leading this conversation with him. I hear you quite well, Michael. It's an issue that we might need to raise a lot with GCIS. And it's quite important that maybe when we have a conversation with Zanele at GCIS, that we raise that. But I want to read a few things that are coming up on the chat and then open it up again to the panelists to come in and speak to the issues. One of the issues is professionalizing the sector. I know Leto's touched a bit about issues of governance. It's not only governance at a high level, but I think we also need to look at the issue of professionalizing the sector. Patricia Hlongwani says community media has to change their advertising model for sustainability purposes. We'll have to better sell our local markets to potential advertisers. MDDA's assistance in this is very imperative, and it's key to the revival of the print sector, since print problems started long before COVID-19 and has to maintain its sustainability going forward. So Wara, I'm going to ask you to deal with that, to say, how do we look in terms of print? How do we look at changing our advertising model? And then I'm going to throw it back again to NCRF about issues around transmission. Do you agree with Michael? Is it an issue that we really need to take up? And how do we do so? And then I'll then end. The last question I would like Leto to hammer on again is the issue of professionalism, because I know that we have governance issues, but you find that 80% of the time, people that join community media do not even have an interest in journalism. How do we then equip them to be professional journalists? So I'll start with Jimmy, and then I'll go to Wara, and then we'll go to Lieto.
Thanks very much. I think the issue of signal distribution, it is very, very critical to the sustainability of community radio sector. And our argument has always been to say the government must actually subsidize community radio, particularly with regard to the issue of signal distribution, because most of our stations, they depend on Centec for signal distribution. And I remember 2 years ago, 16 stations were shut down due to non-payment. I think it is a known fact that community radio, they don't generate adequate revenue for them to survive. Now, our request or our proposal to the government was to say, let them actually bail us from Centec with regard to the issue of signal distribution, so that each and every station, if government can actually subsidize that signal distribution to Centec, we are sure that station would be able to generate the revenue for them to operate optimal. But at this particular juncture, particularly in the period like this of COVID-19, we are unable to generate the revenue that we used to generate. And therefore, the issue of us paying signal distribution is going to be extremely difficult. So we propose that going forward, let the government ensure that they subsidize, particularly the GCIS and MDDA, they subsidize the Centec for station to operate optimal. And secondly, we look at the best model of sustainability beyond just to get grant and advertising, because we've seen the advertising shrinking. And our proposal was to say, let the government, spend 30% on community radio sector, so that we are certain that the issue of sustainability, it is not just an ideal, but it becomes an issue that is paramount, and we are able to look at other issues than to concentrate on the stress of generating revenue. If we have a legislation that dictates to government that 30% of the ad spend has to be spent in community radio sector, we are certain that the idea of sustainability, it won't just be an ideal, but it will be an issue that we promulgate in the sector, and we concretely ensure that going forward, community radio stations are professional, they operate professionally, and the issues also of governance, they are very critical. But I think if we can deal with those first, particularly the issue of signal distribution, because without signal distribution, there's no radio. There is radio because of signal distribution. And we make the submission to say, let the government take care of that particular aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Leto, can you then speak more to the issues of professionalizing the sector? How do we go about that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Well, on my side, like I said, a lot of people, when I moved from where I was with previously with EWN to Soweto TV, a lot actually thought that was a move that was somehow you're moving from a major league to something else that is lower division. And what exactly are you doing? Aren't you worried that when the channel closes down, you would also be, among the casualties? But I think for me, what I was interested more is as when you look at the number of people that they had, there was a lot of duplication in that they will just hire people on voluntary basis. And if somebody knows that I'm just being hired as a volunteer and you are told that, look, you can grow and maybe start from being a cameraman and up to being a journalist. I mean, I'm the editor and I had to edit scripts of people that you could tell even the writing was not that of a journalist. And you ask someone to give you a paragraph and they give you like 2 lines of a story that doesn't have facts and that doesn't have anything because they are not used to writing a story from the start. Sometimes they just write stuff from PR press release that's been sent by the government, and even that on its own is not done properly. So I really came into saying, from management, whoever that you bring on board, these are people that you need to make sure that they fall within the bounds of journalism. Because one of the reasons why we are losing the battle is because we hire people just for who, because they are people. We just want to add numbers in terms of staff. So you would find even from the processes of hiring, like a lot of our presenters, we lost 2 anchors because one of them, when I asked them when the auto cue malfunctioned, they could just simply not be able to complete a very simple story. And when you sit down, she actually just gave me an example to say, you know what, half the time, I don't think this is for me, but I've been working here for 5 years, and this is the only job I have. Instead of discouraging that individual, say 6 out of our 11 staff have actually agreed to go in for training. And I mean, we've increased our inserts from 3 a day to having at least content like you would see with bigger players. And we're not criticizing because we do not have enough platform. But also that has to do with the mindset, also the approach of many people, whether it's advertisers, it's partners, even the employee themselves. As soon as we begin to talk community media, people begin to think charity, even in terms of the energies, education, and everything else that needs to happen. So because of the mindset of a community, people don't go out there and give their all. So that's why I sat down and said, we need to make sure that we professionalize the space. I spoke to Saneth about it as well to say, if the communication regarding journalists is somehow only covers the ones who are in the main, we are not doing justice to those ones who are actually still trying to aspiring journalists to get into those space. So having leaders with an astute journalism background also helps, because you would be able to lead those people properly, and you will understand issues. Even when you are required to make sacrifices, you would know how to channel the energy in making sure that that happens. So I've also challenged the board. I mean, our board has not been that active, but ever since I came on board as well, we have really challenged them to make sure that they understand, because people in community media, even the board members, you'll just have someone because he's famous in the township or they are in business. They just come and become part of that for them to tick the box. So when we challenge them in terms of their vested interest in the channel, we need to, and without any interference, but we need to understand that These are people who are here because they want the channel to work, and we've done it with ESCO, we've done it with employees, we've done it with every other person, even those partners who are not paying the channel, to make sure that they understand exactly what Soweto TV stands for. And that's the platform that we want to encourage and extend to other community members as well, to say, let us make sure that we professionalize our scope of work, the people that work for us, so that when we attract partners and funding, people understand exactly what we stand for and who we are. Even in that way, even government won't actually have their own way to come and just impose things on us. So those are some of the things that I think we need to work together. We need to have more seminars as community media. We need to sit down more. We need to talk about the challenges because I, as a Soweto TV, I was once invited to go cover a story in KZN, but we have one KZN channel there. And I asked them, what's wrong with your own channel here if I have to fly from Soweto to Durban just to be able to cover the story on King Zoliti? So it's some of these things that you need to understand, so that you don't tomorrow wake up and go to Cape Town and cover a story in Khayelitsha when you have Cape Town TV there. What's the way and the criteria to make sure that we share resources, we work together, and all that we do is just to make sure that we compare notes. I think we need to focus on that more.
Thank you so much, Leto, for your input. I'm going to jump onto Wara. Sorry, guys, I had thought that today is my break. I'm not going to be doing much talking, but it looks like circumstances have forced me to lead this panel. Wara, there's a very important question that was raised by Patricia Khumwane about the print sector precisely, on how do we then work on our advertising models in a way that we become sustainable beyond COVID-19. Because right now it looks like how the print sector, and this might not be immune only to the print sector, but also similar to radio and TV, that we've been living on a hand-to-mouth for a very long time. How do we rework our advertising model to ensure that we are sustainable? Because we are not going to come out of this pandemic the same. That is one fact that we all have to accept. Unmute yourself, please, Wara. You've muted. Unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks a lot, Carol. I think firstly we need a sort of collaboration. And can you just tell your mother to stop stuff? I'm busy here. Excuse me, guys. I think we did sort of like what's very important is the industry in itself, mainstream and community media. We need a united force. And number one, if you remember, the MTDA Act was founded on the premise that the mainstream industry will put in money and help to diversify the whole industry, meaning that there will be a rise in diversity in terms of language, in terms of sex, in terms of various orientations across the country. And when the fall of print media South Africa, what is now called print media South Africa, and when Independent decided to go their own way, which in actual fact came to the core of the problems within our regulation, how our regulation system in the country functions. Then that's when we started having serious problems, because then you were able to garner information as a force, as an industry in its own, and we were able to fight everything on its own. When that happened, it was also the time during when the media tribunal was coming up, and when those things happened, everybody would draw their funding towards promoting community-based initiatives, media. And besides that, beyond that, there has always been that since 1999, the Stellenbosch conference of the ANC, there's always been the promise of the 30%, that if we could maybe give 30% to community media, then they will be able to sustain themselves. And that promise even today is yet to happen. Sometimes you feel like it's as if the government itself doesn't really want to have an active citizenry in the country, because that's where community media is. You know, if each and every community could have access to 30% of government advertising, they need to be able to be active in its own and create the content that it has to create. You know, because now you have a situation of what was boiled before an egg or the chicken. Because how can the sector be so much professionalized if there's no money coming into, the money being poured into it? So, and beyond that, Carol, you must also understand that there's also many factors that are hitting us hard. You know, us as community media, print media, we're also very independent media. You know, we are facing monopolies from companies that are involved in other business. For those big companies like your Media 24, they're not only involved in their holding companies are not just only companies that are interested in putting out good journalism or putting out good news, but they're more, then you look at their different aspects of businesses and how they're influential in changing the policy of the country and the policy and how things have to be determined in terms of influence of propaganda in the country. So you realize that us as community media, we are just a minute part of the problem, who nobody really gives a hoot about, you know. But we have these big companies, multi-billion companies, multi-millionaire companies that have access to so much funding but yet will not even be able to promote diversity, will not be able to promote good citizenry within the newspapers, or even good journalism for that matter. But they promote their own agendas, which I know for sure, and everyone knows for sure, that predominantly they somehow get involved into the political sphere of the country. You know what I mean? And so for us, I think what's very important now at the moment is that the problems that are being brought in by online media are actually we should see them as a blessing. It gives us a chance to be on the equal footing in terms of strategy with the same media industry. Because if now I can be able to have a website, and all the newspapers now are having websites, then it will be about to get best form of content that you can deliver in a particular market. You know, but what's also important is that in that process we'll be able to attract maybe the advertisement that you want for your own particular community. So this gives us a time to be very creative, Patricia. It gives us a time to start beyond just print. And as much as we have to keep our print, we must also have our online TVs. We must also have our online radios. Sorry guys from TV and radio. We must all have our different forms of input in our communities. Like for instance, the simple idea is that what we started doing here in the Eastern Cape was that instead of going out and chasing advertising big wine companies, why can't you start on your own? You know, you can start there at the sponsor shop and make a small 30-second video. How many people have their video shops, or how many people have their sponsor shops on a video? 30-second video, you put it online, on your Facebook, on your WhatsApp, and market that person, and that person will definitely be happy about that particular kind of fit. So now I think instead of putting blame to everybody else, instead of putting, we need to look at the different ways on how we can ourselves create content that is more rich for our community, and also challenge the government to come to the party and really give what they've promised. Because at the end of the day, there is no sector that has been killed by the system more than the print. I mean, we survived even what you call state capture. We now know it's called state capture. We had rogue communication officers from the state organs operating themselves and calling themselves, what was that organization called? You know, but they were distributing advertising as if those companies were their own. You know, in my community where I come from, in Vaba, I was literally told that in 2013, 2012, that they have been told by GCIS in top that they must stop advertising in community newspapers. Now they must go and advertise on the new age. You know, it is those kind of things that you find that but we're still here. Some of us are still surviving, you know. And for me, I will really urge to the Department of Education to really put more effort, because this is what happens. This is community media. This is where the archive of the history of the people really stays. This is where Zimvo in 1860, you know, was started. This is where the first president of the ANC was a journalist. The second general of the ANC was a journalist. Who's spent in Robben Island, they're still pushing the newspapers even today. You know, the community newspapers. They were, so in the 1960s, they're still doing their community newspapers today. We've got many activists in our communities who have really contributed. From Justin Arenstein to the Fanzales, to Ombali Dlomo, to Tom Kosi, you know, I mean, everywhere, if you look at the sector in essence, no one comes into this to make money. You know, if you come to community media to make money, you are crazy, because there's no money to be made. We're all here as activists. We want to improve how our community functions. We want to improve how our society develops, and especially for us Black people, because our history is too much fragmented. You know, we want to keep archives so that our kids can know in 100 years now, there was coronavirus on this day, and this is what our people did. In a sense, that gives us pride, that gives us culture to become much more important in our society, you know, because this is what we're not just people who are writing news, you know, we're creators of history. And so it is the right moment now, Patricia, beyond man itself, to be able to create better content and try our best to become better at our craft. That is, now you're going to see the separation between of oil and water coming, setting in. So I think that's my 2 cents take of it.
Thank you, Wara. Thank you, Wara. I'm going to read 3 comments that are coming up on the Zoom chat. And then from there, I'm going to give you guys 3 last questions that you are going to use as your closing points, because we've got literally 10 minutes to go. So we've got Henerta Malango, who says, I think removing the competition amongst the print sector will help. Whatever funds are available must be distributed directly to the publishers to ensure that each publisher becomes liable for reporting on how they use the funds. We are trying that. And then we've got Octavia Khungwani, who is an AIP member. I'm happy to see that you are here. It says, as printing community, we've approached printers and we have formed cooperatives where we are getting competitive rates at Novus for print. But that only helps with a few rands. But to be sustainable, we are not winning. Hence, we are asking MDDA to help us out. And then the last comment I'm going to read, before I ask the 3 questions Lukiswa wanted to ask to the panelists, is actually one from Peter Letachan, who says that I agree with Leto. I come from radio and TV, and now I'm in print for the last 10 years. I'm in the Western Cape, and I'm the AIP board member. My company developed a concept or business model where print, video, social media, and community radio can and should work together and share resources, etc. How do we then take this conversation forward? This is the best time to do it. The time is now.
Yes.
And Zukiswa had 3 questions for you guys. And I'm going to open up my phone, sorry, because she sent them through WhatsApp, to say, what can government do to assist community media during this period and beyond? And then the second question is, no business or country will come out of this pandemic the same. How do we then ensure that all these sectors remain to survive after this? And number three is, what lessons can we take from COVID-19? I'm going to start with Jimmy, then move to Lieto, and then close with Wara. Guys, let's be mindful, we've got 8 minutes. So I'm going to be timing the speakers. You each have 2 minutes, then I'll do my closing remarks. Jimmy, it's over to you.
How do I know now if there's more questions here?
Unmute, Jimmy.
Unmute, Jimmy. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. I think that the first question that Zugis is actually asking is that what is it that the government can do for community radio sector, particularly during this critical time of COVID-19? I think one is to ensure that the issue of 30%, it is an ideal, not just a preamble. So as the NCRF, we want to say, let the government concretely ensure that that 30% ad spend is spent on community radio, so that we are able to advocate for issues of sustainability. The second issue is this one. The second issue is that for us as community radio sector to survive during this period and beyond, is to ensure that we get unwavering support from the government, particularly the MDDA. And we'd also love to urge to government to say, let them extend, or let them actually extend funding of MDDA to ensure that MDDA is able to disperse funding to majority of community radio stations in this country. And in that way, we'll concretely ensure that the issue of sustainability is not just an issue, but it becomes part of the principle of sustainability principle of community radio sector. The last part is that we need to be mindful to the fact that Centec, their tariffs are very expensive. And if government can actually subsidize us on that, I think we would see majority of community radio stations being sustainable. And we are also mindful to the fact that the issue of corporate governance, it is imperative. And we are mastering that. We need also to look at the legislation that regulate community broadcasting, because in the inception of community radio stations, we are talking about volunteerism. And in this particular juncture, I think it is more than 20 years to 25 years. We cannot be talking about volunteerism. We need to ensure that we professionalize the industry. And once we professionalize the industry, we also need to look at the human resource development. And that is my submission. Thank you very much.
Jimmy, while I still have you there, we've got a question from Nadia, which is quite important. I feel like you need to answer it. Do community radio receive any subsidy from the government regarding Centec fees?
No, we are not receiving any funding, any subsidy from government at this particular juncture. That is why 2 years ago, 16 stations were shut down due to non-payment to Centec. And our call has been saying we need really support from government with that regard.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Can we move to Lieto? Remember the 3 questions, you've got 2 minutes. Unmute yourself.
Lieto, myself.
Because I don't have enough time, I don't think I will be able to get to all of these things. But my plea here is, we have, just in the South only, we have, I don't know, maybe over 100 into the Vaal and whatever, the West Rand, let me just say. We have so many radio stations. And a lot of these radio stations have good journalists who most of them are not exposed. And we, as a channel, we don't have good analysts. We don't have people that we can sort of like just go and be able to. So the working together and the removing of those competition lines and everything else would allow us to work better, so that even when we do go and approach government, we approach government knowing that we have a pool of journalists who are well-trained, people who would actually be able to, like if Jimmy, wherever you are, I can need I can actually go and look for a story that you've done and want one of your journalists to give it to us. But because we don't have any relationship that exists, that story could be lost because it won't make it to the SABC, it won't make it to other big platforms. It is for us, because we are not in the business of breaking news. It is for us to make sure that as we raise issues, as we drive the scenarios, we do it with people who are professional, well-trained, so that as we do that, we are now beginning to build a nice and a very tight incubation process that will then be able to continue to be the voice of the voiceless on the ground.
Thank you, Leto. Wara, what can government do for us in this time?
Okay, yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
you're
Okay.
right.
Firstly, I would like to say that as a representative of AIP, doing damage control, Carol, to say thank you to the MDA for the 10 million they sent out to the print of 40,000. Although not everyone was, I think they catered for 260 newspapers print. And thank you for that, the 40,000. Although it was not much, what we're saying is that I don't think for us, as much as it's important that Carol, that we have people who we have employed. We have it's not just a one-man business. We cater most of our entities cater for between 5 to 10 people. You know, we are part of economic growth in our communities, and I think MDDA could, if they could come to the party, they could really help us in terms of making sure that our businesses don't close up, make sure that our businesses continue to contribute into the community and continue to play the role that they've played. And we know for a fact that if you remember, Carol, in yesteryears we took the industry, all of the industry, to the Competition Commission. You know, in terms of unfair advertising biasness, and which we won through AIP and many other stakeholders. You know, and we're given money by it went straight to MDTA. So we hope maybe that that money will come back to the people that were really were the real victims of the situation. Because if you look at even the GSIs or so, it was so appalling to look at the GSIs spent on community media in the past years. You know, I mean, a year alone they will spend close to 1.2 to 2 million a year alone. While with radio, they'll spend close to like 25 to 50 million, something like that. I can't remember the real figures. But we all we're saying is that how are we expected to sustain ourselves and pay for our workers while there is nothing coming towards us, you know? And they encourage us to do co-ops, which we have done. So we hope that if maybe MTDA and other government institutions can help us strengthen these co-ops, maybe it will be something cool to come out of it, you know. And most importantly, MTDA needs to revisit its legality and go back to the mainstream industry and bring them in again so that they can be able to be responsible for what they say they will cater for. Because in essence, the whole industry is not really transformed. And it's scary how it's continuing to be like that in over 25 to 26 years. So we hope that things will really change by the government contributing 30% and by MTDA giving back the money that we call for the Community Commission to the victims of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. You know, with 1 hour is not enough to discuss the issues of community media. But in summary, this was a very important call. I'd like to thank other directors that have been part of this initiative during Media Freedom Week. I might not be able to remember all of them at this point in time, and I can see Nadia is already saying thank you, but I know that NAB has been involved in setting up this call. I know IAJ, AIP, MMA, SANEF, the Press Council. Thank you guys for this collaboration. This has been an important talk. My last 2 seconds, I seldom want to never leave a space without saying my own 2 cents. I had avoided being as a panelist because I wanted other people to speak. But at this current time, we need government to come to party. This song that has been happening over 10 years of 30% needs to become a reality for all community media, be radio, be TV, be print. It needs to be a reality. And as a community media sector as well, we need a collective. We cannot always speak in parallels and not be speaking to each other. And this is the time that we bring together our resources and we forge a way forward. It might look gloom, but it is said that it is darkest before dawn. So this is an opportunity for us to come out shining. Thank you so much for everyone who has been part of the panel and to all of the participants. Thank you for attending this.